the agenda for this talk. I'm going to give a very quick background on what ResearchHub does for anyone who's not familiar already. Talk about what happened in 2025 growth-wise, then talk about some of the product updates that we've built, and at the very end, highlight some of the things that our community is doing, experimenting with potential new features. So yeah, I think, John just gave a much better introduction than I possibly could when it comes to the problems that exist in science. But I think it's pretty clear that we could be doing things better. Sort of the main problem that we think that exists at ResearchHub, where these problems are downstream of it, is that it's just really hard to objectively measure what scientific quality is. If you're a research funder, you're kind of presented with this challenge of like, who do you give your money to in order to get the best return on investment towards whatever goal you're trying to accomplish, cure whatever disease. This is like an easy analogy for us because we're in startups, but like if you apply to a VC and you say, hey, VC, can I have some money in order to build this product? They have objective metrics that they can use when evaluating the decision. They can say, how much traction do you have? How many users do you have? How much revenue are you generating? And they make decisions based on that. In science, it's like a lot harder. The value of any given research output is kind of like subjective to a certain degree. We use a lot of tools that make sense, like bibliometrics. But at the end of the day, you create this incentive structure where, as a scientist, the best way to have success in your career is to play the game and optimize for these bibliometrics rather than scientific quality. So we think this is a huge problem. And we think that crypto is actually a great tool in order to create new financial incentives to help to, compensate folks for making decisions that might have career risk or financial risk associated with it. So this is a picture of ResearchHub's V1 that we shipped maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. It's like a Reddit for Science kind of application where folks can share research, comment on it, earn research coin for doing these things. So the theory of the first version was that if you share good papers, you share good commentary, you'll earn research coin, and then you can do interesting things with that research coin. For instance, we have a bounty feature. So you can spend your research coin incentivizing scientists to do whatever you're interested in. So here's an example from a couple of years ago where we had a neuroscience student, PhD student, who was stuck on a method in their lab. They took some of the research coin that they had earned from engaging on ResearchHub, created a bounty for an expert to come in to actually help them get unstuck in this protocol. And within a couple of days, we had an expert who came in, helped them, and they were unstuck, ready to go. So when you earn this research coin, you can use it to create incentives that are kind of to your own personal benefit. So the first version of ResearchHub, we had a very, lightweight incentive mechanism. Essentially, when folks would add content, they'd receive 1 research coin for every upvote, that they received. This is not a great creation mechanism. Folks will share all kinds of content. They'll get all their friends to upvote stuff. You just get a bunch of really bad content. So we learned that quickly, but it was encouraging that we could use these tokens to actually encourage specific types of behavior. So when we try and change essentially how you could earn research coin, behaviors on the site changed. So pretty cool. You can use these tokens to essentially push people into certain behavioral directions. So we're like, what's an actual problem within science that we could use our tokens to try and incentivize a new solution to? And so peer review, obviously a big problem. Publication delays, folks don't get paid. It's like professional responsibility. At the time, there's a scientist named James Heathers who is advocating for something called the 450 movement, essentially paying scientists their kind of actual value, for the time that it takes to peer review something. And that's very inspiring to me. I think James is an inspiring guy in general. So we tried it out. We're like, we're going to take preprints. We have a team of editors that are compensated in research coin for their expertise. And we had them assign peer review bounties to preprints that they thought were interesting. And turns out that scientists want to get paid for peer review. So it's actually pretty cool. If you shoot a scientist a LinkedIn DM or a cold email, we get something like a 25% conversion rate with the message of, hey, you're an expert in this preprint's topic. We need a peer review. Do you want $150 in this totally made up internet currency, for your peer review? And people are pretty excited about that generally. So we've seen, thanks to the work of Jeff and the guys at the foundation, we've seen some pretty awesome growth here. So last year at SciCon, I think we had 131 peer reviews per week. And last week, I think we had 285. So growth of 120% over the last year. So definitely exciting. Yeah, thank you. So this is cool, right? Like we have the ability to essentially incentivize like specific behaviors from experts and quickly get them to like accomplish scientific tasks. So that is very cool. The problem is we're just kind of like giving out money. So it's like not that sustainable, long term. Like, you kind of have to figure out like someone to actually pay for this service in order to have it work long term. So, we thought about it. We like approached a bunch of journals. We approached some societies. It turns out they're pretty happy with the situation around the free peer review, and they weren't really trying to pay for something they're getting for free. So, we're thinking about ways to potentially monetize this feature and turn it into something sustainable. Kind of like the first idea is making our own journal. So last year at SciCon, we kicked this off. The idea was it would be, open access, very low publication fees, where basically the APC went to the peer reviewers. A large majority of it. And so this is pretty cool. We can actually get peer reviews in 14 days. We publish papers like within a month, generally, from when they're submitted. And so far, we've had just under 20 preprints submitted, and we'll have 9 publications by the end of the year. So good first year. But also, like, in this process, just journals feel like a business model from yesterday, not tomorrow, kind of. So we're thinking about like new ways to potentially monetize this feature where the incentives are aligned long term with kind of the health of the scientific community. I think the open access movement is incredible. I think APCs are not great, and they create kind of incentives for companies to publish a lot, not necessarily like great science. So we're thinking about like new ways to potentially like monetize this paid peer review feature. And one of the things that we started doing last year was playing around with funding pre-registrations. So we talked about this a bit today. Pre-registrations are sort of like, hey, here's the study that I want to conduct. Here's my hypothesis. Here's the methods that I want to use to test that hypothesis. Here's the statistics I'm going to use to analyze the results. Then you share that all out in the open, and that kind of holds people accountable, in theory, trying to increase reproducibility. And so we're thinking like, if journals won't pay for these peer reviews, like who will pay for these peer reviews? And so like peer reviews on funding proposals is compelling. Like in theory, this is a figure from a paper from 2009 that claimed 85% of all scientific funding is wasted. They use like a very, I think like visceral example of like it's equivalent to the GDP of Kuwait or something like that. And the way they get to this like kind of estimation is like looking at 50 to 85% of studies can't be independently replicated. Like more than 50% are never shared in full because the results are not significant. And then peer review happens after the fact instead of before the fact. So methods are designed in a way where they're not quite as optimal as they could be if there were a bunch of experts who kind of gave their feedback beforehand. So we were thinking like, funders, they spend a lot of money, maybe they're like wasting a decent amount. Could we build a feature that could help them save money, get a higher ROI for every dollar they spend on science? And we've got some early excitement here too. Thanks in large part to the excitement of John from DMT Quest. We went from funding $100,000 last year to $1.5 million this year. So that's very exciting, and I think is enough evidence to continue to try and build this feature. After we finished SciCon last year, we had like our annual offsite where we talked about, hey, what do we want to build for the next year? And so after the conference last year, I remember sitting down and with Kobe, our lead engineer, and we're talking about some of the big problems. Like our homepage was overwhelming. It's like a Reddit-style forum where there's like science and then there's like a crypto, and like even if you just look at the homepage, it's like there's a lot going on here. It's not like you can clearly understand what's happening in a second. So we weren't retaining users that well. Bounties were difficult to discover. So this is kind of an interesting one because even though they were difficult to discover, basically folks would have to read through the Reddit-style forum, like one post at a time in order to find something within their expertise. They were still doing it a lot. So there was still like significant demand despite this like pretty horrific UX. So we wanted to make bounties like more discoverable. And then the last thing is like with the developments of LLMs, like Cursor is an amazing tool. Our initial code base was not built in a way that's like fully optimized for AI development. So we wanted to essentially rewrite the web app in order to build in a way that's like easy to build with AI in the future, like maybe a little bit more streamlined, and then also help to sort of grow our major revenue driving feature. So this is what the V2 looks like. We worked on this during the first quarter and a half of last year. Essentially, this is like a way cleaner, kind of like social media style feed, like more traditional, where there's no curated list like Reddit. So I think folks are much more used to this. In general, tried to get a lot of the clutter or get rid of a lot of clutter, but there's, I think, still some work we could do here. We built an earn tab. So this is like specific discovery of bounty opportunities based on your expertise. We moved over our electronic lab notebook. So like being able to save your comment, we could do that now, which is pretty cool. Yeah, and so after the first like quarter and a half, we were like, what do we want to build now? And we had gotten some initial excitement around funding. Dr. Guy Fincham is a breathwork researcher. We met DMT Quest through him. We had some interest in the funding feature. We want to build this feature, I think, like a little bit differently than like traditional crowdfunding tools have been built in the past, where the customer is the scientist or the person who wants to raise money. Here we're thinking the customer is the funder. And if we can build a tool for funders to help to allocate their capital more effectively, hopefully we'll be able to bring in a lot more money for researchers. And that also is like a great incentive long-term for a company, where our goal is to bring in as much money for research as possible, which I think is probably better than an APC business model. So yeah, this is how it works. You can post your funding opportunity. Folks will apply. We'll recruit experts, on your behalf automatically, and then through our editor team to submit pre-registrations. We get peer review done on those pre-registrations, and then they can be crowdfunded. So like an initial funder, like a group of people can get together and actually like propose a study, improve it, and then get it funded. So this is cool. It's like we're starting to generate some revenue. Like the content coming out of the funding feature is like exciting in my opinion. But for some reason our like user numbers aren't going up. Like our revenue is going up, but our user numbers are not. So like again, when you look at this home page, there's a lot going on. Like how do you decide what content goes here in a way that is actually attractive to a scientist who shows up to the site? It's pretty challenging. So what we wanted to do is build a tool that basically helped to retain folks kind of at the very top of the funnel, giving us more scientists to automatically notify when a peer review is needed on a funding proposal. So what we just shipped, I think like yesterday, earlier this week, is a preprint discovery feed. So when you log into ResearchHub, you can like select your topics of interest, and then we'll create a machine learning feed for you that will get better over time. So the idea here is that like, if you're a grad student in a specific field, you could log on to ResearchHub every morning. Over time, we'll start to feed you content that's relevant to your career and can help you improve in your own science. Yeah, so that was the last 3 quarters. We're getting this out. Well, we got it out there earlier this week. So we have an offsite in 2 weeks, and we'll start to think about the next year. And in order to inform some of those discussions, I think like the best part of ResearchHub is that we have like a fantastic nonprofit foundation of all scientists who just help us grow and give us product feedback. So like, scientists, they're very smart, very hardworking. We've got all these editors who are helping to review these manuscripts and peer reviews. They're like working too hard, so they decided to build their own AI tools in order to help make this easier. So, we've got someone named Dami who is very passionate about machine learning, and he built our own kind of internal AI peer review bot. So what we'll do is run like preprints through this peer review bot, and then compare it to peer reviews that are submitted to have an idea if someone like has unique insight or if they just ask an LM to write a peer review. There are a bunch of other tools here that you can talk to Jeff about if you're interested. But yeah, pretty exciting. It's like our community has engineering talent, and they're building tools to help solve their own problems, which is an amazing part of being an open source project. In addition, they also built an expert finder. So this is like using modern LLMs to look at like the content within a certain manuscript and then suggest experts who could be potentially good candidates to share peer reviews. So this is awesome. Like you can like type in either like a field or upload like a specific piece of content, and it'll spit out 10, 15, 20 reviewers who would actually be experts in the topic that you're interested in. So pretty cool. Yeah, and then the last thing that we're excited about is potentially prediction markets. So this is early stage, but there's been a lot of thought around like how you could structure prediction markets in order to help to improve reproducibility, and then also help to curate resources to fund the questions that are most exciting to the most amount of people. And it turns out that the challenges around scientific prediction markets are actually kind of solved by pre-registrations. Like if you predefine your hypothesis, you predefine like what will count as supporting that hypothesis or not, then you can bet on it. And then you can even bet on whether a replication would support that initial kind of definition of what was, say, supporting the hypothesis or not. So there's a lot of exciting things we can do here. We funded a replication study looking at like a specific part of Alzheimer's, and we spun up a prediction market around it. So currently, right now, Michael, he's in the audience, he's a third-party kind of CRO who's conducting this experiment, and we're betting on it. So early stage, but like some cool experiments on how ResearchHub could potentially improve the way that we do science. So yeah, many thoughts, questions?
Great job, Pat. Yeah, big improvement over a year ago. Two things I've noticed just over the last few months working with ResearchHub. One, you probably have heard this, is just improving on-ramping for the non-DSci community. Just even simply how do you get like credit card, like as USC, I think that's a simple one. But the other one, and this is something that we actually built into an app that we're doing in Zimbabwe for pediatrics with rare conditions, is to surface, like work with third parties in this general space, not that many, but surface some of these ResearchHub projects elsewhere. That's kind of what we've done. So what we're doing in simple terms is that we're looking at the genetic profile of a child. We're doing a comparison to ClinVar with AI. And then when we find a variant, we're spiking it out. Hey, there's a variant that you should be concerned about. But then we're doing another cross-reference with ResearchHub and surfacing those projects that people are doing. So to me, that's, because honestly, one of the big issues being in this space for me was not many people know about ResearchHub, and we know there's a lot of really interesting things there, and we're doing work on it ourselves. So I'm just thinking things like that, just to kind of like nudge people, whether it's funders who kind of want to fund from just like a fund run, or like some like bake-off or something, or actual researchers and clinical use cases where these things can be surfaced. Things we've done, and we're already seeing some like real interest about it.
Cool. No, I agree wholeheartedly. Like, I think we should definitely be marketing the projects that are submitted to ResearchHub, and I think it's pretty interesting. Like, in general, our thought process is we don't have product market fit yet, so we want to basically build value where there's organic growth, and then from there, bring a lot of attention. But we think if we brought attention now, the product's not good enough in order to retain it. So we basically want to see organic growth before we really try and bring in a whole bunch of people.
So if the AI is going to get smart enough soon enough to just nominate experiments, do the pre-registration part, then they're going to be smart enough to do the peer review. So why are humans in the loop at all? It feels a little skeuomorphic, and maybe it's clear that human scientists are going to have to evolve and figure out what to do in a world where AGI is coming, and any individual scientist will not be as smart as that entity. So is this just gaming out the next few years in this transition, or what is the longer term solution for how scientists are going to be in the loop here?
Yeah, totally. So I think there are a couple assumptions in that question, that still have to play out. That could be likely, who knows? But I think like at the current stage of like the development of LLMs, our peer reviewers are a little bit better. So like that could change in the future, definitely. It hasn't yet. Something that could happen is like, I think reinforcement learning is a pretty big deal, and that like part of the reason why LLMs are so great at coding, but maybe not at science, is because like there's a lot of people like trying to help make it better at coding. So one of the things we could do in the future, and we have no plans to whatsoever, but use ResearchCoin to incentivize human reinforcement learning, on a model to then have like a model that's really, really good at peer review because a bunch of peer reviewers trained it. So it's something we could do. I don't love it because you kind of have to keep it proprietary probably to make money from it. But there are cool things that we could do in the future. And I think like the second that LLMs are better than humans, we'll change our product to try and accelerate science. So,
in thinking about driving up your users, can you say more about what users you're most interested in driving up? Because you just started the funding model. As you know, our university only has 2 users right now, so far. So are you looking at the traditional academic universities in terms of driving up, in the United States, all over the world, in terms of getting on their early career researchers, postdocs, funders that are traditional, kind of all of it? I see like 4 or 5 different types of users, and I'd love to hear more about that.
I think it's one of the challenges that we have in general is that like there are few audiences, that we're building this product for. Like if the funding feature works, the customer would be funders. I'm not sure it's going to work. So it could be something else. Like the things that like career scientists are looking for are different than the things that early career scientists are looking for. So yeah, it's a pretty different audience. In general, early career scientists are, much more friendly with us than I think later career ones. It's like when I was in my PhD program, I felt pretty disenfranchised. Like there wasn't going to be a path, to do a full research professorship. So I would have been into it, when I was in my PhD, just as like an opportunity to potentially have a career in science, long term. More established folks generally, in the past have been like, I think less open-minded. That's the wrong way to say it. Like, I think they just have less time to try new things, sort of. So, like, it's harder nut to crack, but, like, we've got some people in this room that are pretty awesome, start to pay attention. So I think it's one of those things where, like, you just work on a problem for a long time, hopefully build trust, and then, like, it'll come. We also, challenges like crypto leaves a bitter taste in a lot of scientists' mouths often, and, like to empathize, kind of deservedly at times, like the Moon Boy Lambo thing can be pretty, I think, distasteful to someone who's like making $30,000 in Boston, trying to, just have a career. But like, yeah, I think the problem that we're trying to solve is one of financial incentives. And once folks understand that and they meet us, they're normally pretty excited about what we're trying to do. So yeah, I think our biggest focus right now is building value within a feature where we see organic growth. And then from there, once we start to see that, I think it'll be kind of the next chapter.
Round of applause for Pat. And